Hi, this is Dave from the Floodwood High School shop class. We are working on our sauna today, and today we're in the hot box of the sauna. And we are going to, you can see it's all insulated. We are going to put a vapor barrier up, and we're not going to use a regular, normally we would use a 6 mil poly. And in the sauna, because of the heat, what we're going to be using, it's a foil vapor barrier. And the reason we're using a foil vapor barrier is as this hot box, the sauna, as it heats up, it doesn't melt the vapor barrier. And the foil vapor barrier comes in a 3-foot roll. And what I've done is I measured the perimeter of the 3 walls. I have a 92-inch wall here, an 88-inch wall on the end, and a 92-inch wall on that end. And so I cut a piece that totaled that for the perimeter of these 3 sides, and we're going to place that on. As I said, it's only 3 feet wide. So being 3 feet wide, we want to make sure that we're lapping things properly. So instead of starting at the top, we're going to start on the bottom. Our first row will go across the bottom. The second row is going to overlap this bottom row, and the top row will do the same thing. It'll overlap that. That way, if any water does run down, it can shed properly. If we were to start at the top, put this first row on the top, and then the next row, and then the next row, if any water would get on it, it would run its way down, get behind the foil poly into the insulation, causing mold and mildew. So our goal here today is we're going to install this foil vapor barrier, and we'll get started. And I cut it when I measured the lengths of the 3 walls. I cut it about 6 inches longer than that. I cut 2 pieces actually, and then for the top row, because these are 3, we got 8-foot ceilings. The top row I actually cut 3 separate pieces for the walls. So we'll start putting this on, and then once this is done, then we have to do the ceiling itself. We also we'll have these seams where they're lapping over, and I have some foil tape. Basically, it's the same tape that you use on ductwork, and we'll use that and we'll tape up all of our seams. So let's get started here. Put this on. We don't need to have a ton of staples on, but we have to have enough to hold it. And we're just going to start on the one end. Our floor is sloped, so we need to remember that our floor is sloped. Just going to tack it. Going to roll it all the way out to the other corner. Hold it level. Tack it up. And we'll hold it tight in the corner. So I can get a nice 90-degree corner there. I don't want to have a bulge, so we don't have a nice 90-degree corner. As I said, I held it tight in the corner so I have a nice seam in the corner. And I'm just going to continue to roll this out. when we start to install the second row, as I said, we're going to overlap this. And we're just going to overlap it 1 inch to 2 inches is all we need to overlap it. And we'll just start the same thing from the beginning. Just make sure we're overlapping. And then just start rolling it out. It's a short distance, you can go all the way across the wall. Make sure you're overlapping there. Oops. Let loose on me. The foil poly is not like your normal 6mm poly. It's basically it's really a paper and tears pretty easy. But anywhere that we get tears in, we can come back and tape those rips. So I'm not too concerned about it. So now we have this seam here. We have the bottom piece on first, the next one overlaps, and this is aluminum foil tape. And it has a temperature, it's over 200 degrees that it's fine to. So it won't be an issue in the sauna here. And all we're going to do is tape that seam. And our purpose is, as a vapor barrier, one of the reasons we want the seams tape is to help eliminate any drafts from the outside. So any seams that we have, any little punctures that we make, we'll put some tape over it to seal it up. So we're just going to go around this room and tape up our seam. This foil tape, it sticks real well. Once it sticks, it's kind of a done deal. If you peel it off, you're going to be ripping the foil poly. But it also cuts real simply with your hand, so it's easy to work with. You just got to keep it from touching itself and touching the foil poly, making sure you're putting it exactly where you need it. And like I said, any little tear that's got a paper back on the back of it, any little tears that we've created, if you can get the paper off it, utility knife can help. Any little rips you made with the stapler, just take and put a little piece of tape over it. It'll help seal it up. And we'll go from there. We'll continue polying the rest of it. I just wanted to show you on this corner here, when I was pulling it across, it didn't stay tight in the corner. I didn't have a nice 90. And it's not a huge deal. So I'm going to take the same thing. I'm going to take this foil tape and I'm just going to splice it together. Fold it in the corner. Make sure this is making the 90. Now there's no more seam, and if you have to add more tape, add more tape. I got a little spot on the bottom. I got to add a little more tape. patch up any holes you may have. Like I said, you don't want to have any penetrating holes. You want to seal up as best as we can. We are going to put, after we poly it, we're going to be putting a tongue and groove on the walls. But before the tongue and groove, we're going to put a 3/4 inch furring strip on every stud. And the purpose for that is we're kind of betting that there is going to get moisture behind the cedar boards. And so we're going to leave a space for airflow. We're going to fur out each stud 3/4 inch. There'll be a 3/4 inch gap. If any moisture does get behind, it'll be an area to breathe. We'll do that actually on the walls as well as the ceiling so that everything can breathe. And if any moisture does get down, it'll easily run down, not get caught on the wood. It'll run down the wall, come to the floor. We'll leave an opening actually on the bottom as well. So any moisture that does build up behind here has a chance to escape. Okay, for this upper row, I said I cut a piece just for this wall. Just a few inches longer than the one wall, so I'm not wrapping all the way around. Because this is going to go on the wall as well as on the ceiling. It's a little bit easier to use pieces just for one wall. You don't have to worry so much about the inside corners. But we're going to do the same thing. And I'm actually going to staple from the bottom and not worry about the top. Start in my one corner. Just get a staple to hold it. And then I'll work my way across. So I put staples on every stud on the bottom, pretty much. Now I'm just going to push it up to the ceiling, right at each stud. Maybe you couldn't see that with me in the way. Just pushing it up, going over where there's a rafter so I know where 90 degrees is, holding it up tight, stapling it there. And then we can come to each rafter, make sure we're making 90, and staple it to the ceiling. Run out of staples. And we'll do that all the way around. Again, we'll tape that seam. Okay, now this piece on the end wall, my trusses are going left to right, this direction. On here, on this end wall over here, we were able to start with an overlap about 1.5 inches, ran up the wall, stapled to the truss. And we've got about 7-8 inches that hung over. Well, my first truss on the ceiling here is about 18 inches away, so I'm not going to hit that. So I'm not going to run that far. This time I'm going to start at the top just going to fold it up on the ceiling a couple inches. Just so when we put the foil poly on the ceiling, I'm basically just covering that piece of backer. That'll give us, when we put our piece of poly out across the ceiling, it'll give us something to tape to here on the end to seal it up. As I said, this foil poly rips real easy, so we need to make sure we know where the studs are. Making a nice 90-degree up here. Following the studs down. You can see as you push on the poly, it reveals the stud. I don't know if you can see that in the video or not. Now we just have our last wall to do. So on the last wall, I'm just going to go back to lapping about 1.5 inches, 2 inches again, so it goes up across the ceiling. The reason I want to do that is hopefully I won't have to use an extra roll. I'm hoping that it's enough. It's a little more than 7 feet wide. It's 88 inches wide, I think. So if I can get enough, I'm real close to being able to make 2 rows of this work. So I'm hoping having this run up the wall and then across the ceiling on this side as well as that side will make up so I don't have to have a 3rd row of poly. To poly this room with this foil poly, it's about $135 a roll, and it's just enough to do this room. It's basically an 8x8 room. Outside dimensions are basically 8x8, and so we don't want to waste. And anywhere that we can save. If I were to just go just to the ceiling, I would for surely need a 3rd roll. That's why we're going to overlap just 1.5 inches here. This is something that would definitely be easier with another person. But again, as you get it across, you push it up to the ceiling, up to the truss. Make sure you find your studs and just go along the top. Get your top set in place. And there we have our walls poly. Okay, when I measure from one side to the other for where we finish off in the ceiling, we've got about 5'8". So that's going to work out perfect with 2 rows. So we'll just measure the length, butt up to the one wall. We're not measuring anything exact. I got 89 inches We'll cut 2 pieces at about 92, 93 inches and roll down on each side a little bit, and we'll get our ceiling polyed. When I cut the foil poly, all I do is I roll it out, hook on, set my tape measure down, measure out to where I know I need to be, and because this rips fairly easily, so I'm cutting about a 93-inch piece. Because it rips fairly easily, you want to make sure you got a nice sharp knife. If you cut it just on the concrete, you're going to end up tearing the foil poly. So you're best to have a piece of wood underneath it, and then just hold it and cut a nice straight line. And if you have the edge of your roll sitting there, you can use that kind of as a straight edge to guide you. It'll be close enough of a straight edge to be able to guide you so you're not cutting some wild angle on the end of your piece where you've got one edge is 93 inches and the other one's 110, or one edge is 93 and the other is 75. So if you just follow the roll of poly when you roll it out, just like this, use that as your guide to cut, and that'll give you a close enough cut. And then I just rolled it back up again, and my piece is ready to go. So I've got 2 pieces cut for the ceiling. We'll get them put on, and after that we just have to tape all of our seams and tape over any holes that we've created. Okay, so I'm going to start rolling this out. I'm going to do the same thing again. I'm going to overlap 1.5 to 2 inches on what's already there. And I'm also going to fold down, you won't be able to see it on the camera, but I'm going to fold down, drop my stapler, I'm going to fold down the wall, the interior wall, that 2x4 wall that's here. I'm going to fold it down that wall. Just tucking it up in the corner, stapling it to the wall. Then I staple it to the ceiling, make sure it's tucked in the corner. And then stapling each truss. Light there. Like I said, it's a little harder to work with than regular poly. Got a little bit of a crease in it. I'm going to pull it out a little bit. Nothing horrible. And we'll cut out around our box and then put our next row on. So I said we got the light box here. We're going to make sure we cut that out. We're going to follow the perimeter of the box. And this has a gasket on it. It's an exterior box, has a gasket on it so it can seal. And we'll end up putting some tape around that as well to seal that off. Now in this next row, we have, this is for the chimney, the Class A pipe that's going to go around here. This is the attic insulation guard for the Class A pipe to go through the roof, and it keeps the insulation away from the pipe, so that way the pipe doesn't cause insulation to start on fire. So we have that, and we'll end up putting a slit in the poly and cutting around it. And I'm just going to measure to where the center of this pipe is. It's about 30¼ inches from the wall to the center, so I'm going to cut it at about 33¼ inches. I'm going to cut a slit. and I'm going to cut the slit at about 24.5. We're going to be just lapping over 1.5 inches here, and 1.5 inches here is about what it's going to work out to be. So it works out pretty good. So, as I said, we're going to cut it at 33. And I'll go 19 inches. I'll cut it right up to this side. So 33 from the one end, 19 from the edge. We'll just cut a slit for now, and then we'll cut around it once we get it up there. Now we're just going to push it up and form the poly around it a little bit. Just cut it so we can make some folds until we can get it stapled off better. So now we'll just push this up around the pipe and just cut around the pipe. Push it up and we have blocking around it. Staple it up, and then everything else we'll tape it. We'll just take some small pieces of tape and we'll tape it to this outer piece of insulation protector. This collar on this insulation shield, attic insulation shield, this collar goes up and down, and we'll line this up with our ceiling. And then there's a piece a collar that'll go on this, that'll clip on this, that holds both our Class A pipe up. It'll get strapped to some boards we have up here. So we're not worried about taping to that right now, but we will tape any of our seams that we have. We'll get them taped. As I said, this stuff, if it touches itself, it's kind of a done deal, but we'll tape any of these areas up that need to be taped. Any little holes that I may have created, whatever. It's the worst part about the tape is the paper. Then once you get the paper off, it's making sure it doesn't stick to itself. So we just fill in any holes we have. We use the tape itself to hold this seam on the other side where there is no framing membrane there. We'll just use the tape to hold it to the other roll. The nice part is this stuff sticks really well. So once it grabs onto the poly sheet, you don't have to worry about it. It'll grab it and hold. And just press it on and you're done. So that's it. We'll go around and get everything taped off and then we'll be finished. We still have the light box here. I guess I could do that, cut that out. And all I'm doing is following the perimeter of the light box. I'm going to take the same thing, and I'm just going to take smaller pieces just so it's simpler, even though I'll have to
separate the paper backing from the tape a few more times.
give you something fun to watch, I guess. And we'll just take some small pieces and go around that light itself so that we can get tape and that sealed. We'll just push it up against the, as tight as we can up there, and it'll take a number of pieces. And we'll just get a number of pieces on, and we'll get tape put around the light so that it's sealed up there nicely. You probably weren't able to see what I was doing. I could take and cut an arch in the tape, kind of to form the box. I'm not real concerned, but I'm just putting it up on the box, folding it to the box, and then pushing it to the ceiling. So I'm getting it taped here. And it's going to take several pieces to go all the way around to get a nice seal. But that's what we'll do. We'll just keep adding small pieces of tape, going around, taping the foil poly to the box, and we don't have any air penetrations. It just takes a few minutes to do, but it's worth it. You don't want to have any more cold drafts than necessary coming into the sauna, especially if you're going to want to keep it 185 degrees, or maybe you want it hotter, maybe you want it 200. Last thing you want is a nice cold breeze coming in on you. So that's all we're going to do. We got a couple more pieces to put on there. We'll tape the rest of our seams, and then we'll be done. Okay, we have the whole sauna polyed. It all looks like a big metal foil box. Seams are all taped together. So we're ready to, the next thing we're going to do on our base, we're going to put across the base, we are going to put a piece of cement board, probably about 4.5 inches high. We're going to snap a vertical line because our floor slopes both directions. So we're going to snap a line. We'll cut the cement board to fit, and then once that's on around the perimeter, then we have a mesh tape, so we'll put mesh tape over all of our seams, and we'll mortar the floor. Mortar all of our seams, fill in all of our gaps, push the mesh tape and mortar over our cement board, fill in any holes, and then after we're done with that, then we're going to waterproof the floor. So our poly's done. I haven't decided. I think I have enough poly. I'm going to do the foil poly on this interior wall just to keep the heat inside this room. We are going to insulate the interior wall. We're going to put I think we have an R13 2x4 insulation we'll put in that wall, and that'll help hold heat into this room. And we'll put that same vapor barrier on the hot box. This would be the hot box, the sauna itself. We'll put the same foil vapor barrier on this side, and that'll just keep the heat trapped in here. So that way it won't take as large of a stove. Anything we can do to seal it up is going to make it a whole lot easier to heat. So I hope that explains it. Like I said, as we're using the foil vapor barrier, so that way when this heats up it doesn't melt. And we started at the bottom. The foil comes in a 3-foot roll. We start at the bottom, so as we go up we're lapping over the top of each one, so if moisture condensation builds on the wall, it can run down and not get caught behind on the back side of another piece and get into the insulation. We taped all of our joints, and any holes that we made we taped, so everything is sealed up. So we should be good. And I don't know if you'll be able to see it. I'll turn the camera around. So here's the changing room. We just have regular 6mm poly on the walls in the changing room. So walls and ceiling. And that's a vapor barrier. You wouldn't believe how much it helps to have a vapor barrier when it comes to heating any type of space. If you only had vapor barrier and no insulation, that would make a huge difference. But now you add insulation. We have an R21 in our outside walls, plus a vapor barrier. This place is going to be warm, a lot easier to heat. It'll be cooler in the summer and warmer in the winter.